things tend to take longer than you expect.
Literally just putting a compo tin on a rock 100 meters away and trying to shoot it. And then discovering some blokes having a dump round the back.
Well, I think we're going to die, so we may as well enjoy what we've got left.
Landing on the wrong side of the island with shit equipment and getting on and doing the job that needs to be done.
They were first discovered by a man called John Davis, an Englishman, in 1592. They were first claimed. The very first claim was British, Captain John Hawkins, 1594. And their first name, in fact, was Hawkins Maidenland. He claimed them for his sovereign, Queen Elizabeth I, and that was their first name. You finally, only in 1700, so we went there, we took possession in 1690, and they first appeared in the 1700 World Atlas, published to the world as Falklands Islands, and in the revised 1702 edition as the Falkland Islands. In fact, of course, Argentina called them Malvinas. That word only comes in, the French had this word Malouines because they came there from the port of St. Malo. They had sailors who realized they could pull in there in bad weather and things, and they came in with Malouines. But Malvinas, the Argentine term, only really comes in after about 1767. What a lot of people don't know is that the French went to the Falklands because they were British. The French actually went there to manufacture a war, and under a clause from the Treaty of Utrecht, they turned around and said, "Oh, look, Spain, we shouldn't have done this. We'll give them to you." And of course, they were going to put Britain and Spain on a direct collision course for war. It was a war that was very narrowly avoided in 1770, and oddly it was just left brewing. And ridiculously enough, even obviously Argentina became independent from Spain. They felt they had inherited this claim, which technically you can't inherit a claim, so but that's by the by. And so this war that was manufactured in 1770 actually, for the weirdest of reasons, took place in 1982.
So when Margaret Thatcher ordered a task force to sail to the South Atlantic, most feared it was a dangerous gamble, fighting a war 8,000 miles from home.
So after A Company had put their attack on Burnside House and followed through, B and D companies were coming across on the right flank, but their actual positions were a series of supposed Argentine trenches. And as the Boca House attack went in, then B and D Company came under fire too from the sort of line of trenches, and we're talking 1.5 miles from Goose Green, and we're talking about 500 meters from a feature called Darwin Hill. And you've got basically a line of extended line of paratroopers, A Company on the left, B Company in the middle. Wrong, B Company on the right, D Company in the middle. They did change later. And you've got C Company now coming as reserve company. We're only half a company strength. So we're bringing up the rear. So as light starts to come in, and in that part of the world, it normally gets light about 10 o'clock in the morning because it was May time. And there was a bit of a firefight going on to the high ground to my left. Okay, there was the odd sporadic fire going. And thinking nothing of it, just probably taking out an Argentine sentry. And all of a sudden we got rained down with mortars. I mean, literally they just came down on us, and you can hear them because they make a plot, and you can basically, sometimes you can see them as well. And they just came down and just came rained us all. They caught us out in the open. And the only thing that we could do was run forward to the feature of the bottom of Darwin Hill. Now, before that, we all hit the deck, and there were mortar rounds coming down. There must have been, over a period of about 3 or 4 minutes, 30 rounds come down. Some of them weren't going off. One of them landed right between my mate's feet, literally, within about 4 foot away. It just went into the peat and didn't explode. A few of them hit the rock because basically the terrain was all tufty grass with rock. And I decided, I just went, fuck this. I said, right, I'm going to move. I'm going to move on 3. 1, 2, 3. And I got up and ran. And all of a sudden, my mate JY shouts out, Spud! And I turn around, I see this. I just see it. Well, I thought I saw it. I stopped and it exploded probably about 10 feet away from me. And it was all tampered by the peat. But this piece of shrapnel came out in slow motion, but it must have been going a fair few, fair speed. And it comes straight across my thigh, missed it by an inch. I just kept running. These small margins in war that a million soldiers could tell you about that's happened to them. That happened to me. We ran into dead ground and then there's nothing we could do really. So we got a brew on. A company advanced up this hill and were fighting and you could hear it. But there's no point in us doing absolutely anything because they have to get on with it. B and D company over to the right was still advancing forward. Not so heavy fire at yet. And remember, Goose Green is still a mile and a half away. Round about 11 o'clock, there was such heavy gunfire going up on the top of Darwin Hill. We decided to advance around a bit to see if we could support them in any way. And then basically, it was over. We moved up to the top of the hill and A company were all out. There was these fucking Argies dead, guys crying. And we walked through this position and we're thinking, fucking hell.
It was by no means a walkover for the British, although ultimately their vastly superior training and leadership at all levels won through.
It wasn't a war about me. It wasn't a war about any individual or any individual group. I also speak up now because the Scots Guards did incredibly well to go from public duties out there and take on their 5th Marines. No one's taking anything away from our brothers in the parachute regiment or our Marine friends. They did an amazing job and they carried the fitness that allowed them to do that yomp, as they call it. Without a doubt, praiseworthy beyond belief. But, the Scots Guards did an extraordinary job to go from public duties to being on the front line in a place that far away, and eventually up and against their 5th Marines who were well trained, well dug in, well armed and equipped in a way that the British Army really wasn't. I mean, look at the equipment we took down there, the joke. But that's what we Brits are good at, landing on the wrong side of the island with shit equipment and getting on and doing the job that needs to be done. I mean, you're a Marine, so you understand it better, but as a soldier, the concept of sitting in some big metal box that gets hit and goes dark and fills with smoke and starts melting around you is just one of the worst things ever. I mean, I wouldn't even particularly like to be a tanky. My aim is always that I can dig a hole as fast as possible with my fingernails and get my face in it. So it was horrific. And the minute that sort of thing happens, the whole question as to why they were still on board, why they hadn't been got off and put on the ground as fast as possible, why it was sitting there in daylight, comes up. But, that's what war is. If it all ran smoothly, then it would all be done by Americans, which second wave had the Coke machine on.
One of the ships, the Galahad, burst into flames immediately. The ship had been carrying 2 companies of the Welsh Guards. For those who'd been anchored for several hours, they were still aboard.
I'm looking down this big long line of burnt faces and people that look really, really bad, blisters and skin hanging off them because they've been burnt, which is a horrible picture to see. And people smouldering because the clothes have been on fire. And so all these charcoal faces and burnt faces, and I look along and there's one face that's white and it's not burnt at all. And I said to him, oh, what's happened to you, boy? And he said, "Oh, Squeaky," because that's what he used to call me in the Welsh Guard, Squeaky. He said, "Oh, Squeaky, that's the end of our war." I said, "Why, what's happened to you?" He said, "Well, I was in the wardroom," which is like the officers' mess for those who aren't initiated into the military parlances. I was in the wardroom and we were watching blue movies, mucky movies. And when the bomb hit, a picture fell off the wall and the corner stuck in the top of his head and he had to have 4 stitches. And the dull sod thought his war was over for 4 stitches. You know, I've had my sad moments, as Chris has alluded to, about the moment I was screaming when I got back, but that was because they were taking me off a stretcher and I'd been on the dressings for the best part of 48, 72 hours, something like that. And they'd all adhered to me, all the foam had adhered to my body. And when they moved me, obviously it hurt. And I only weighed 8 stone. I was 18 and a half when I was in the army because I played rugby. And I was a prop forward. And the next thing you know, they're moving an 8-stone guy about.
Within days, though, the Royal Navy had suffered its own tragedy. HMS Sheffield was hit by an Argentine missile.
If I could have reached out, I would have touched it with my arm. It was below me. It went below me. I was on the deck above. But if I could have reached through the deck I was sitting on, I was lying on, if I'd have dangled my hand down, it would have taken my fingers off. I can't say like the going there, on the way there, it was fun. It was worrying because we didn't know. But during the thick of the action, we just took it as, well, I think we're going to die, so we may as well enjoy what we've got left. As it turns out, we survived. We were out there with the 2 other Type 42s, the Coventry and the Sheffield. We was on point protecting the rest of the fleet from the air attacks. So we were relatively close to them, and we could see the Sheffield burning on the horizon after it had been hit. And then, of course, when we went in to do the naval gunfire support, which is like the close up to the Falklands and then bombard the mountains and the Argentinian dugouts, wherever, we used to go in with another ship. So it was relatively close to ships, but most of our war wasn't fought in Bomb Alley. Our skipper wanted to entice the jets over. So when we closed up with the Falklands to do some bombardment, we went in during daylight hours because they can't fly during the night. So we went in on purpose to try and entice some of their jets over. And unfortunately, some of our main guns and weapons jammed. So they came across, there was three waves of 4 jets dropping bombs on us. We got hit once. But that was particularly frightening because they were all over us and we were firing. There was huge amount of noise, and the machine guns and the Ehrlichens and the main guns going off, trying to protect us. I mean, they were swarming around us. To be honest, we were very lucky. We only got hit once. Nobody got injured. It was a bit. It was amazing. It was the bomb went straight through without exploding.
Straight through, right past
straight
you.
Through. Yeah, right, just below me, just within touching distance below where I was taking cover on the deck because we knew that they were there. We knew it was going off, and we knew that the main missile system had failed, and so it was just a case of trying to make yourself small. And I was right in the middle of the ship, like the very widest part, probably where you'd aim for if you was a jet pilot. To be honest with you, the biggest, fattest part, get the most damage, and that's what happened. There was men that I know who were in. I think there were three men were in the actually after engine room underneath where I was, and it missed all of them. It came very close, even closer than me, probably over the top of the heads of some of them. They survived, obviously, and I was part of mobile damage repair, so I got dragged down into the engine room by the chief stoker, along with some other mates, and we set about repairing the 2 huge holes that were on the waterline. It was amazing going down the ladder and seeing daylight in the engine room. It just like blew me away, and bright green sea cascading it through these great big holes, like horizontal waves coming in. And within a relatively short amount of time, we were shipping a huge amount of water, and we set about fixing it. It took days. We were freezing. We didn't have a chance to put our once only, the orange survival suits that you can put on. Well, we didn't have a chance to get those on, so we were stood there in cotton overalls, and we were going into hypothermia. we were getting electric shocks from all the damaged wiring that was dangling down on us, because we were way below once we got into the engine room, we was way below the waterline. So we was having to scramble up the equipment and the machinery to get to where the hole was so that we could start trying to do something about it. And we were covered in diesel. It was hell on earth, to be honest with you. But like the armed forces sense of humour, it was just non-stop. We were laughing and giggling. If you can imagine a pyramid, like you would do, 3 blokes at the bottom, 2 blokes on the next level, a bloke on the next level, and then one at the top. We were like that, trying to hold the guy at the top up so he could let go with his hands and do the work above him on the hole that was there. And as he got an electric shock from the dangling wires, we all got it. And so it was painful, but it was really funny. We found the funny side in everything, although it was a really scary. And at this moment, the jets are still coming in on us. They're still firing at us.
Yankee company was left on this bloody hill without the kit, and that was a tough night. We dug we erected a peat wall because we had no shelter, and we got into this polythene bag which the MOD euphemistically called a survival bag. I think it was a bag that fertilizer was delivered in. Anyway, my radio operator, my runner, and I, the 3 of us, managed to get into this one bag. I don't know how the hell we managed that, but before that we'd had the O group, and the company commander had called us in. And he told us about the Battle of Goose Green. And that was the 28th of May. That was the day that Colonel Jones was killed and 17 others of his battalion and a Royal Marine. I was totally resolved. I remember the anger of the troop when I told them this. I remember the anger. It was palpable, mate. I thought, my God, I don't want to be on the wrong side of this lot. Getting close to the mountains, we'd been on for about 4 or 5 days. And my radio operator suddenly fell over in great pain. His ankle had gone. I mean, we were walking across elephant tussock grass. It was a horrible country. I had to take it all off him immediately. I mean, you got the whole unit behind you, backing up. You can't stop the unit. So they just kept on going. I grabbed his 351, his PRC 351, said, give us your codes. What else was there? Oh, you had some spare ammo. You don't need that. Take it all off him. It's 8,000 miles that way. Good luck. See you after the war. And left him. He sat there for a couple of days. A helicopter picked him up and flew him straight to the LSL Galahad. And he landed on the Galahad 30 minutes before it was bombed, in which 48 Welsh Guardsmen were killed.
British forces digging in at St. Carlos were held up by the loss of vital equipment on the Atlantic conveyor.
I think it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, one morning. I forgot which mountain they were clearing. There was Mount Harriet and Mount Longdon and Two Sisters and a whole bunch of other stuff going on, all kind of on the same night, really. Marines were doing their bit, Paras were doing their bit. Everybody was obviously well coordinated, as the British Army normally is. And so we were meant to go forward up to 2 Paras lines, myself and Mike Forge, and go to a rebro station as well, a radio rebroadcast station, and deliver something, code cards, I think. I was given them anyway. And so this Gazelle came in to pick us up in Fitzroy. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. And so myself and Mike, he was my boss. We got on the aircraft, and then this staff sergeant, another brilliant guy called Joe Baker from Paris. He'd served earlier with Mike Forge in 16 Para Brigade, and he was older than me. I was 21 at the time, and he didn't really pull rank on me, but he, he's a staff sergeant, and I'm just a para signaller, and he had his Bergen on and his weapon, and we were literally about to take off, and he just came up to the aircraft and said, Mac, let me go with the boss. Let me go with the boss. And I wasn't going to get into an argument then, and I went, oh, okay, no worries. And so I just gave him the wallet that I was supposed to deliver to the signals officer, and then picked up my weapon, my Bergen, got off the aircraft, and off it just took off with 2 pilots on board, Mike, and Joe Baker, and then it just went behind the hill and got shot down.
We're told to advance to the forward part of Darwin Hill, which then overlooked Goose Green. So we're advancing, and the rest of the guys, the battalion, are clearing up, doing ammo restats, getting the wounded, the injured, and all this business, and doing body counts, and shoving off these RG prisoners and stuff, and who, as far as I can make out, were proper soldiers. I mean, they were the proper dude on top of that on Darwin Hill. Contrary to popular belief, they were all conscripts. I don't fucking think so. But I mean, even a conscript can pull a trigger. So we move on ahead to secure the southernmost part of this feature, and we get there, and there's this billiard table sort of land that just goes all the way down into Goose Green, like a flat as a pancake. And the settlement you can see, but to the right and forward is the is the airfield. And there's Bakaras on this fucking airfield. These Bakaras are turbojet ground attack aircraft. I mean, they're just absolutely horrendous pieces of kit. We were more scared of them than the Mirages or the Skyhawks. And I'm thinking, what is going on here? All the screaming and nonsense is still happening behind us, but we're having to focus on in front. And then I can see all these hundreds of them, all on the airport, which is a grass strip, really, and all in front of Goose Green. And I'm thinking, fuck, can't they see us? Why aren't they firing? Because we didn't know at the time, but they had these Oerlikon guns, 30 mil cannons, anti-aircraft guns. Well, you would do if you got an airfield, wouldn't you? You'd secure it with these anti-aircraft, which they later turned into the ground roll, and started firing at us. Plus, they also had those Beaufort guns. They took off. The only time I've seen Beaufort guns is on World War II, the World at War Jeremy Irons documentary, where the Navy boys were on ship and they put these magazines of shells down, boof, 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 and they come out like that. Well, they had a couple of them, they'd taken them off ship and they had them in the ground roll. Of course, we didn't know about that until we started to advance. But anyway, I see all these RGs and I'm looking around and I see my mate Charlie. I say, Charlie, can't they see us? He says, well, I don't know. He got the binoculars out. Well, Ken did, because, there's only one per patrol. And he says, yeah. He says, they're RGs. They think we're RGs, he said. They must do, otherwise they'd be firing at us. Then Ken sees the guns. So that was it. About an hour later, well, it wasn't. It was about 40 minutes later, because they wanted to keep the momentum going. Chris Keeble, the 2IC of 2 Para, took over, Major Keeble. And basically, we had to keep the momentum of the battle going. And C Company were ordered to advance down this slope, while D Company and B Company, who were still fighting their own little fights with trench positions over to the right. So Ken says to me, right, Spud, we got to go down the slope. I said, you're fucking kidding me, aren't you? He says, yeah. He said, you're point man. Because I'd been point man with Ken previous, and I guess he could trust me, because point man is you got to be semi-switched on, and it was just one of those things. So I said, oh, for fuck's sake, Ken. He says, yeah. He says, it's got to be you're first. And basically, we went down the forward slope of Goose Green in what they call an arrowhead formation. So there was me at the front, 2 guys behind me, then 4, then 6 or 8, and then it sort of went out like a wide arrowhead. And at a distance back, probably 30 feet, would be the HQ and the signals element with Major Jenner, Roger Jenner. So we advanced the contact like that. I fixed bayonets. And then you heard this fucking Spuds fixing bayonets, and you heard this clink, 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 and everybody else was fixing bayonets, because I thought, well, what the fuck? You could see these sort of command tents in front. Well, about 300-400 meters in front of us well before the main position of Goose Green. So you just advance to contact like you just think this is the end of the 20th century. Isn't there an easier way of cleaning up this position?
You know, you got a job to do and you do it. I'm afraid I just don't see him as enemy. No.
Learned a lot of lessons. What sort of things? Well, fighting through. Just keep on going. There's no stop, no turning back. Just straight through. Well, we've got to do, haven't we? You know, we can't just jack halfway.
Well, I led the attack on it, and we took it out and we won that specific point. But I realized that we'd lost all our momentum. You know, we had our first wounded, our first Argentinian prisoners in our hands.
At the time in the battle, I'd run out of ammunition. I'd got pissed off with trying to get empty magazines back into bloody 58 pattern webbing, which was now all wet and swollen. I'd already taken the decision to throw my mags when they were empty. And I took to picking up Argentinian FNs. The trouble with that is, of course, you never know what's in it when you pick it up. It could be completely empty. But I wasn't going to throw away my SLR. I then had the misfortune of stupidly thinking I could change the mag on an FN because it looked so like an SLR, but it has a different magazine clip. And when people are shooting at you and things are going bang, you don't stop and start examining the weapon you're holding. So that's how I ended up with the two. And that got translated by the likes of the media into some sort of true grit, firing with both hands, which was pretty much bollocks.
My bayonet snapped whilst attempting to kill a man, and I had to continue, obviously.
And that is when you see the guy's face
and he says, please, to you in English.
And the same with Corporal McLaughlin. He was put forward for the military medal. I went up to Major Argue is dead. I went to his brother's house because all his personal effects are in his brother's house, all in boxes. I got in touch with his brother David and I said, can I go up and have a look through, and got all his notes and what have you. Got his field notebook and it says Corporal McLaughlin, military medal, so-and-so, military medal, all the medals in his notebook, written by his commanding officer. So we've got his commanding officer, says he's fantastic. You've got his platoon commander, says he's fantastic. Here's a medal. Then I've got a letter of Major Argue, his commanding officer, writing to the CO saying, this man on Mount Longdon led his section like a demon round the rocks of Mount Longdon. You have read my citation. I've put in for an award. And the CO put him in for an award, but he never got it. And I can only think that it's jealousy that someone has said, you know the reason he got that, he never got that. And so completely untrue. I have interviewed the people who were there, every single member of 5 Platoon. He didn't have the time to do anything. He was doing enough as it was. That was completely without any base whatsoever. You tell me or point me to anyone who actually, honest to God, the man's a brave man and he deserves the military medal.
17 British personnel lost their lives. They were laid to rest close to where they fell.
Lieutenant Colonel Jones, Captain Wood, Captain Dane.
Then we did the schoolhouse. We ended up with about 20 odd RG prisoners down by a little stone building called the Dairy, which was by this bridge we'd all gone over. And I later found out that the area we were attacking, where the Argies had dug in, was basically a pig farm. And they'd used all the pig sties as they'd turned them upside down, and they'd used it as and dug them in as overhead cover from protection. So there was all these trenches all around there. And the Argies were all over the place. I mean, and then we were getting shot at by our own blokes from behind because they couldn't make out who the fuck we were. And after about 15, 20 minutes after the white flag and then the schoolhouse burning down, sort of, I and a couple of other guys had gone right forward because we wanted to see Goose Green and wanted to see what the score was. And there's no way we could have got into Goose Green because there was just too much fire. You just couldn't get, the Argies were firing everything at us. I then came back and seen all these prisoners all laid out down by the, what they call the dairy on the track. And there's this one poor old Argie, he had his leg hanging off. One of the guys had to cut it and put the skin up. And then Dick Morrell, who was our medic, he was in the dairy patching up all the guys. I mean, he patched up a hell of a lot of guys. Argies as well, he did. Only a small building, probably about 24 by 12, stone built. And then this Argie officer was standing up and we were telling him to get down, or someone, well, I wasn't, telling him to get down. Dick came out, seen this Argie with the no legs, said, I want this man up here, I want to treat him. The Argie officer said no. The Argie still had his pistol. And then one of the blokes was going to shoot him, and then Dick said no, and Dick butt-stroked this officer.
But the Argentine cause is not helped by our confirmation that they've placed one of their most lethal weapons, the 155mm long-range guns, deliberately in between people's houses.
At the same time, somebody shouted air raid warning red, which meant enemy aircraft coming in. Then somebody on the right, they came up from behind us. They come from the north. So they come up from behind Darwin towards us. They came round and they just let cannons rip, shot up everywhere. The irony of it is they shot up all the Argies up the track because they were on the track. Obviously, the pilots are lined up on the track. But the funny thing was, well, not the funny thing, the strange thing was 30 metres further on was half a D company all lined up on the track. Luckily, no one got it. They came round again, and then they dropped napalm. They came round again. One of them dropped napalm, and it dropped past the dairy, just after the prisoners, and it singed me. It was that close because it went that way away from me. Singed me because I had sideys and a bit of a tash. Just singed, took it all off. And a few of the other guys got a bit of a roasting as well, but nothing too great. The Picora pilot was shot down, although he said later that he ditched it. Yeah, and he came floating down into our position, and the guys were shooting at him, and someone said, "No, don't shoot," because obviously we're Paris. We don't do that shit. So that, even though the fucker had dropped the napalm on us. So anyway, he landed bang smack in the prisoner's position. And Sid Higginson, who was a sergeant of C Company, RIP now, ordered him to pick the Argie up with the no leg. And he didn't, he said, no, I'm not going to pick him up. So he got butt-stroked.
The Argentine cause can't have been helped by placing their anti-aircraft guns in the school playground. It cannot be helped by painting the Red Cross on a white background on any house that suited them.